Do you mind recording? Oh, perfect.
You betcha, Maggie. Thank you.
I know Alexandra isn't going to be able to attend class. I think she's on a really long flight today, so she was hoping that you'd be able to record.
You betcha, always. And if I forget, thank you for reminding me. Design thinking. Let me just take a swig of this. I got myself a Yeti mug, so this way, when my coffee sits around for hours because I'm doing 400 things, it still stays hot. Design thinking is a flexible, iterative process focused on designers collaborating with users to solve problems based on how the users think, feel, and what they're motivated by. So design thinking is an iterative process in which we seek to understand the challenge, understand the user, challenge assumptions, and redefine problems in an attempt to identify alternative strategies and solutions that might not be instantly apparent with our initial level of understanding. So design thinking refers to the cognitive, strategic, and practical process by which design concepts, so for instance, proposals, new products, buildings, machines, etc., are developed. So it's been has transformed the problem-solving process to developing a strong understanding of the target user. So you're really getting down in there. In design thinking, we develop an empathetic understanding of the people and the problem they face when recognizing the user's needs, emotions, motivations, and what influences their behaviors. So again, this could be in relation to just about anything. Tapping into all of these things can obviously get to the problem. So empathy, which we all know and hopefully practice, the action of understanding, being aware of, or being sensitive to, vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, of either the past or present, without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objective, explicit manner. That's a mouthful. So we focus on the problem versus focusing on the solution. For instance, I'm having a problem and I just can't get my work done, and I'm talking to my partner about it, and he says, you know, well, you just got to be grateful, and maybe you should just make a list, versus just essentially being a set of ears and I understand what that problem is, or understand that that's troublesome for you, etc. So solution-based thinking focuses on an end game construct that will do a better job than the current solution. Focusing on the problem uncovers limitations and obstacles long before a solution can even be entertained. So now, as designers, focusing on the problem allows for more experimentation and iteration, and results in a solution that is more aligned with the user's needs and motivations. So essentially we're kind of going in these steps. We research, we survey, now we're diving a little bit deeper, getting to know our user a little bit more. So when we're thinking outside the box, so as creatives, we have an easier time with this concept than most. So design thinking is a more natural way for designers to tackle problems by using creativity as tools. So we get into the process. So we empathize, we define, we ideate, we prototype, and then we test. We test always. So we understand the problem you are attempting to solve through empathy. Be in the physical environment to deepen your understanding of the issues involved with the problem. Observe users and discuss their experiences, motivations, pain points, and frustrations. And conduct open conversational empathy interview and encourage the user to tell stories. Pay attention to their facial expressions. That's a big part. Body language, and ask why. You know, how people gaze off in the distance, how people, you know, like maybe scowl their brow, you know, begin to kind of fidget, and you see they feel uncomfortable. That's when you can really kind of dive into their feelings. Defining the problem involves making sense of all of the data accrued from the empathy stage. So what common obstacles do users have? Is there any patterns from these observations? What's the biggest problem? And then, for instance, formulate a blank need to blank statement. So drivers need to have an easier way to pay for parking. segue into something we're doing later. That's where the fun begins. So hold ideation sessions that are free from judgment and encourage people to come up with creative ideas. Mind mapping, brainstorming, role-playing, etc. are techniques used in the ideation process and encourage creativity and blue sky thinking. So a prototype will be a scaled down version of your product and a user can interact with. These can be so many forms. They can be actual wireframes. They could be paper, Post-it notes, cards. There's cards that you can get for UX where you can essentially just sit and rearrange things nice and easy versus sitting on the computer and wasting time, clicking and moving. Essentially just playing with playing cards. So this prototype incorporates learning and understanding from the previous design thinking stages. Make sure to address obstacles, flaws, and constraints identified in the previous stages. The fidelity of the prototype isn't as important as the solution it represents. Iterate, redesign, and rework the prototype until it represents the resulter you envision. Typo. The fifth stage of design thinking is testing. Testing that prototype with the user. So defining our goals for the users for the test. You folks, this isn't anything new for testing. We tapped into that last in Visual Web. So we're allowing the user to verbalize and emote while they interact with the prototype. Always record, always with permission, everything the user's saying and emoting. And then we use this to revisit previous stages of the process. It's certainly not the final process. Testing is not like, okay, we're good, we're done. This happens several times. So the result of this testing will direct you back in design thinking phases to iterate, refine, and then retest again. Repeat. Going through the process once will most likely not completely solve problems. So repeating that whole process in parts. So you probably scale down a little bit as you get going. You won't need to be as big as that first step, but definitely circling back to ensure we've essentially checked all those boxes. So how to be a more empathetic designer in 3 steps. So as a designer, being able to empathize is paramount. So empathy is something that necessarily comes naturally, not always. A large study into the genetic basis for empathy revealed that not even 10% are empathetic due to genetics. Empathy is something that can be learned and improved upon, and I believe taught in grade school now. Mimic facial expressions. So observing someone's facial expressions indicates how they feel. Like I said, the way they're like gazing off, the way they might, squinch their brow, their nose, they might smirk. When someone smiles, you have a natural reflex to smile as well. There's so many facial expressions that aren't necessarily a reflex. When you try to mimic those, they can connect you with that emotion. Speaking with friends and family, try mimicking their facial expressions as a way to connect with their emotion. Now we listen. So when working with a user that's new to a process, you need to forget all of your assumptions. We will naturally assume how someone will react or feel in a situation. By engaging through listening without judgment or assumption, we can build empathy for that person much easier. Listen objectively to what the person is saying, conveying, and you'll have a deeper insight into who they are. And then there's that body language, how a person's standing, crossing their arm, tilting offers insight as well. When speaking, when speaking with someone, try to connect their body language to what they're saying and recognize patterns across multiple individuals. Recognize the emotion someone is conveying when they throw their hands up in the air is a great way to understand who they are and what motivates them. So in creating or redesigning a web product, we need to really deepen our understanding of the users, their needs, and the problems that exist in the development of the web product. We'll stop that share. What do we think? Does anyone have, and be totally honest, have issues with empathy? If you're like, oh, I'm definitely that person that always empathizes. Maybe it's something you learned, anything like that? Nazreen, what are you thinking?
I'm honestly a bit confused between surveying, researching, and design thinking. Okay. It seems to me that they are all the same.
They definitely are essentially all part of the process, and they're all things that we need to essentially integrate in when we're doing these big web products, and we're starting at that UX stage of things.
So in every project, do we have to do all three?
Essentially, the projects you folks will be, say for instance, you graduate from Mohawk and someone says, Nazreen, can you build me a website? In whole heart, honestly, I don't expect you to do all of these stages of things, especially if, say, you're building a website for someone's new closet organizing business, because it might be a much more scaled back website. It's going to be a small website. Maybe it's really just more showing off what they got. Diving into these things deeper is something that essentially you would be doing if you decided to take the UX route of design. So you go and you work for a company and you are specifically a UX designer. So these things are essentially processes that we do for massive websites. Like a friend of mine who I'm hoping to get in to speak with you folks. He owns a business doing web design, but very strongly on the UX and UI or UX, no, both of them. But he's designed a portion of Harvard University's website. He's worked with Labatt. He's worked with massive, massive companies. And those guys are the companies that are going to need to tap in and dive in this deep. So essentially saying he's a company that builds websites. Not everyone is going to sit there and do all of these processes. There's a team of people that are the UX researchers that dive into these things. And you're also working with the team from essentially that company. So say Harvard, for instance, they have people that work to do these sort of things. And then that's where the professionals will come in, and then you share your information, you dive in a little bit deeper. Does that make sense, Nazreen?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem. And I think I've said and noted before, I'll be totally transparent and honest when it comes to taking this UX UI stream. UX, because we are in a design program, I understand that UX is not for everyone. Most of the people, if you are diving into, or you do want to go into the web design field, there will probably be a larger portion of you that will taper off into the UI stream of things more so than the UX portion of things, because I assume, and this is just as me making an assumption, it's not the case or always the case. I assume that most people that are here are still more visual thinkers, but that's 100% not the case. There was people last year in the stream. One previously was a psychology major, and she loves the UX portion of things. One of my previous students before this stream started, she graduated 2 years ago, maybe, I'm thinking. She actually, in fact, has gone to work for my friend's company, and she's on the UX side of things because she prefers that. As much as she thought she was a visual person, once she got into this stuff, she really enjoyed diving into getting into the brain and doing the research and organizing the research. So it's not for everyone, like I said, especially when we're in a visual program. But most definitely good to have. It's good to know, because all of these things that we're practicing in the UX side of the program also strongly, obviously, will sway how they apply to UI. So it's all things that we're still going to need to know and be able to dissect and analyze. Okay. If that makes sense.